I guess. You're joining my Romans romp. And talking about a Romans romp, I was looking at some images yesterday that we took inside the Orkney Museum of lots of Roman artifacts, only to be told, Bill, as we remember, the Romans influenced the way they made artifacts in Orkney. Isn't that right, Bill?
If you say so, Carl, yeah.
And then you think, well, if the Romans influenced what people made in Orkney, how did they get those influences if they didn't actually have any of the artifacts?
Oh.
That's a good point. So we've got Bill, check.
Yep.
We got Del. Yeah, we can't forget him. We got Pat.
Yep.
Del's here, but not, if you know what I mean.
We got Dirty Rog.
Yeah.
We got David. And we got...
Rich.
Right. So there were some questions I was asked last week. Will I be looking at Leptis Magna? Well, we'll have a little look at that this week. Last week I mentioned the word Gask Ridge. Yeah. And I mentioned Staingate. And I also mentioned the Black Isles. But we still haven't been able to work this thing at the name of this woolen Roman cloak. But I'm still working on it. And also, at the studio the other day, as a little bit of a treat this week, I managed to discover this. Now, this itself is a wonderful... It's a book with maps in it. Now, you can't get hold of these anywhere now. And... you can see how old, you can see this one here, and it's really well used. And I loved using this map because there was two sheets. There was a southern sheet, which is going to be put up behind me if I can get the blue tack off. Hang on, there you go. We got, hang on a minute. The blue tack from my wall is still on it, right? So we had these two brilliant sheets, right? So we had that one there. And what's that strange noise in the background? So we had this one here, and I love this because it had all the finds that had been found in Britain up until 1978. Now I can tell you now that this map itself, that has all these finds on it, is probably doubled in the number of sites that we know of, as in this southern sheet. Right. So if I nicely fold this again. And you can't get hold of this for love nor money on Amazon. You try. There's another version out there, but it's not as good. And what's of interest to me today is this map. And this is a map of Roman Britain, the northern sheet. And on this map itself, you look on it, and it sort of shows loads of little dots on it, indicating like Roman finds going all the way up to Duncasbury Head, which then looks out over to Orkney. Now I can say that we've probably tripled or quadrupled the amounts of sites that was on this map as offered to us in 1978. But the one that we're going to actually look at today is we're going to look at this frontier here, which is known as the Gask Ridge. Now, I mentioned about the Antonine frontier last week. We all know about the Antonine frontier. But there's a third wall, or there's a third set of defences in north of the Antonine wall. Now, that's really interesting because it's that age-old thing, isn't it? That we always thought that the Romans stopped at Hadrian's Wall. There you go, Hadrian's Wall. But they didn't stop at Hadrian's Wall. They went all the way to the Antonine Wall, and then they went all the way to the Gask Ridge, and then a fourth frontier known as the Cleven Dyke. Now, those are lots of things that people don't talk about, but there's amazing fortresses in Scotland north of Edinburgh. There's one which is on here known as the Tootil Fort. I've been able to pronounce that. The Ichtutun Hill Fort. And there's also a massive fort known as the Ardok Roman Fort. It's huge. The Ardok Roman Fort, north of the Antonine Wall, north of Edinburgh, is one of the finest sets of Roman remains in Britain, but nobody ever talks about it. And then we go all the way up this map, all the way through to Aberdeen, and then we go all the way up to Inverness today. So I want to look at all that type of stuff. So you are going along with my whim, and also there's this book. Now, Bill, unfortunately, you've been missed out the will this time. This book is worth about 250 odd quid on Amazon. You can't get hold of it. This is a very rare book, right? And I said to Michelle, I said, leave it to Bill if I died.
I got one very similar, Carl.
But it's got to be this one, Bill.
Just that one. It's called The Emperors of Rome.
So basically, it's probably yours is probably a reprint, which is great. And you sort of go through the pages, and it's got all the descriptions of what happened to all these Roman emperors and little coins. Love it. It's a lovely book, isn't it, Bill? So anyway,
There's mine.
There's yours. Oh, it's much littler. Oh, okay. Oh, by the way, you've got to have all your Roman books here, like Bill's got there. You've got to get them out. You've got to bring and show us. This is supposed to be a.
Carl,
Yeah, go on.
if I may interject,
No, you can't.
I'm going to anyway because I got a book that's sort of slightly post-Roman.
Yes.
It's called Britain Before the Norman Conquest. It's got 2 Ordnance Survey maps in it, south and north, and it looks like that. Probably can't see it.
Yes,
Probably
we can see it. I've never
Yeah.
come across that.
Right, I bought it, about 30 years ago. And it gives sort of, it shows some of the places that existed at that time.
The 20 cities of Roman Britain, that type of thing, yeah?
Yes.
And what survived? Yes. Now, one of the things I like to say, always when we look at Roman Britain, is that the idea of Rome never left us, and I keep saying that the idea of Rome never ever left us. And even though we've got a date to when the Roman invasion began in AD 43, we've got 100 years that precedes that we actually see Roman influence. And then, after Roman civilization starts to collapse majorly, now that's the problem. I stopped there. When Roman civilization started to collapse majorly, I can't really give you a date, because what we are now finding with the evidence at Chedworth, for example, we've got a Roman mosaic being fitted at Chedworth, going into the 410s, the 420s, and you're starting to think, well, hang on a minute, that's when things were starting to break down, or were they? Now, the idea of breaking down and the idea of what's happening, we're not really understanding what's happening in the 400s in Roman Britain. But one thing is very clear, is lots of things are continuing into the 400s, 1 or 2 things continuing into the 500s. Then you've got this massive cultural exchange with like the Anglo-Saxon and the Franks and the Jutes and all the rest of it. But there are experts in the field who would also argue that there should be no such thing as the Anglo-Saxon period. And then I noted the other day, right? I'm not going to say who, I'm not going to say where. There was this guy arguing that there was no such thing as the Roman period in Britain. And at that point, I thought, this is going a bit too far. And Michelle said, who is this? And I said, it was so-and-so. And they said, why should they say that? But what I'm trying to say is that there's lots of vagaries in Roman Britain. And one of the vagaries, some of the vagaries are what we're going to talk about today, about why is there loads of Roman forts in Scotland when the Romans never ever conquered Scotland. Or so we're told. Yeah. And the wonderful fort at Ardoch, I better get on because we're just not going to have enough time. The Roman fort at Ardoch itself is there's a little plan there that says they built one fort, then they built another fort, then they built another one, then they reoccupied it, then they built another one, and they built another one, and they kept going. But this is north of Edinburgh. And there's also there was also the Cramond lion actually found. This big ornamental lion that's also found in Scotland. And you're thinking, well, why don't we really understand what's going on? And no, we don't really understand what's going on. There is no end properly to Roman Britain. And in many ways, the beginning of Roman Britain's a bit strange as well. So anyway, let's look at a few images actually, because I got quite a few actually today. So let's just look at these images. So right, so let's share the screen, and sharing screen on 3, 2, 1. Brilliant. So what I've got, this image on the screen is basically it says Highlands, Lowlands. Now we're very much aware that this area running sort of this highland boundary here is approximately where the Gask Ridge is, that third Roman frontier in Scotland. Fair enough. But it's also what you also see on vague maps occasionally is the odd bits of Roman villas going all the way up as far as Inverness. Roman villas, that is, not Roman forts, Roman villas and Roman forts as well, and loads of little bits of Roman road. Because if I go back to my little map here, if I go back to my map, it sort of you've got lots of little Roman forts, and also you've got names of rivers and so on, and points of note. And you start to think, why did they go through all that effort? We've got names, the Diva Flow at Norman's Dyke, going towards Aberdeen, and you're thinking, well, the Romans didn't get that far. That's what we're told. That's what we're told. And there's loads of little dots around here as well, indicating settlements and so on. But this is actually from 1978. So lots of things have been really, really updated since then. So we'll move on again a little bit. And one thing, as Bill knows, Orkneys is a little bit further than actually shown on this map. It looks like Orkney is really, really close there, but it's a nice ferry journey. Bill, I can't remember how long that ferry journey was, but from
Scrabster,
yeah,
about hour and a half.
Yeah, it's not that close, is it? Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's not that close. So in other words, it's quite likely on a good day that you could probably see the Orkneys on a very, very good day, but it's actually quite some distance away, really. Anyway, moving on to the Roman thing, what we're going to do as well, we're going to look at this site, Leptis Magna. Now, and I think Bill indicated that he'd been there, or he wanted me to look at it, which I will. And the other thing as well is about doing this Roman thing each week, is that I can just chuck any Roman stuff in that I want. And we can come back to Leptis Magna, but we're doing that at the end. And I know Bill wants to say something. Go for it, Bill.
No, nothing at all, Carl. I'm just trying to work out what the writing was. It doesn't say Leptis Magna, so I don't know what it is.
It looks Russian.
Yeah,
it does say
It's Russian, actually, yeah.
Oh, it's Russian.
Yeah, I can see it now in English, yeah.
And there you've got this beautiful theatre. You've got this beautiful theatre. So, and you've got the streets laid out.
Carl,
Yeah?
what were you calling it? Is it Gas Ridge, GAS Ridge, or what?
Gask, G-A-S-K. We're going there now, Rog.
Oh, right.
By the way, in obviously my latest book, that Roger's moaning and groaning hasn't got copies yet, because it does take a little while to print copies, Rog.
It's coming next week, you said. That's good.
It better be, because you promised to buy 8 copies now.
No.
Anyway, this image behind me, this is a really interesting image, because Michelle, when I said I want you to do a reconstruction of a signal station, right? She had no idea what a signal station looked like, and her reconstruction was exactly the same as the one behind from the archaeological evidence. So I thought that was actually pretty good of her, actually, because we don't really know what these signal stations are. Towers which we find along Gask Ridge, and we find from Resolven all the way up to Colbrand Roman Fort in Neath and Port Talbot County Borough, which is also in my book. And you've got them all the way over the opposite side of the Bristol Channel. You've got these signal stations. They were basically to relay signals, or they were to relay warnings, or they were posts for billets of soldiers occasionally, and all these different things. Signal communication means lots of things, doesn't it? So there it is, absolutely brilliant reconstruction. But this isn't one of Michelle's. This is actually one I'd found in the book. And Michelle hadn't seen that, and you can actually see another signal station in the distance, which is actually quite close. That other signal station is only a mile or so away. But along Gascoigne, the signal stations would have been a lot closer than the ones, for example, in regards to Resolven and Herfynydd, which is heading from Neath all the way up to Colbrand Roman Fort, south of Brecon. 1 minute, Del. 1 minute, Del. So one thing that we are doing, and one thing that I'm trying to get across, is we're learning more and more about the Romans, even though we think we know a lot about the Romans. Del, quickly.
Oh, yeah, what I was going to say is, you know, the so-called Roman marching forts in Wales, which supposedly sort of, when they got the gold, you know, they had to protect them overnight. Do you think they were signalling forts?
Well, actually, this thing about marching camps being temporary and protecting things and all the rest of it, it's an absolute load of nonsense, because...
because the ones I've seen, you know, there's no way they could be defended. And
the other thing as well is, what we do find in certain areas of Wales, like Gethley Gaea, and Neath Common, and Gorsynon Common, and Landrydnod Wells Common, I can go on. There's marching camp after marching camp, and basically they did these things as a jolly. Actually, sometimes they built these sites as a practice for the Roman military.
Give them something to do.
Give them something to do, and
like the old Bridgend Council in the 60s, 70s. Just give them something to do. Something to do.
One of the things I don't know if it's Richard or somebody else. One of the things I had somebody sent me an email and he said, it was a chap who lives in Newport. It wasn't you guys. He said the reason why we got stretches of Roman roads is not because they were used, is because it was to give the military something to do. Now that may sound absolute nuts, but there's whole stretches, there's whole areas of Canada, right, that have Roman roads going across them. Christ, that's wrong. There's whole stretches of Canada that have roads running across them that don't actually go anywhere, because they were being constructed by the British military as something for the British military to do. Del, quick, because I've got to move on.
Yeah, talking about that, giving people things to do. Our estate in Porthcawl was built in the late 40s, and when we had our extension built on the side, and next door had theirs done, we found walls, and you know, about 3 foot under, and we were told they were apprentice walls and just buried.
Exactly. So this is the thing. That's a good lead on. Even though what we're looking at now, even though we're looking at now is the Gascoigne, right? All of these are along this length of the Gascoigne, right? All the way from Ardogh, all the way to Ixchutil, all the way up to Strat Tathro. All of these are sort of forts in a line, and they're along a road. They're actually along a length of road. Now, just because this is going to sound very difficult for some of us to work out, just because we got Roman forts there doesn't actually necessarily mean to say that they were built for defence. Now, there's a point to be made here. Now, up there in this area, all the way across here, the British Army trained soldiers from Wales in trench warfare. So we see whole landscapes across here that have got trenches across them. But we didn't fight the First World War in Scotland, well, unless the British government's actually kept something from us. We didn't actually fight the First World War in Scotland, but troops were actually being trained there. And we obviously have the records and we've got the books, and I don't believe this nonsense in 1,000 years' time. We won't be able to work out what was going on in this period. Yes, we will, because there's so much stuff out there that it's going to be impossible to destroy it all, right? But say, for example, in 1,000 years' time, somebody was digging holes in Scotland and they found trenches and there was bullets in them. they might come to the conclusion that the First World War was actually fought in Scotland, and then suddenly they'll find a book or a reference to see that it wasn't. But what we don't have with the Roman period is those records. We don't have the information to tell us what was going on in lots of these fortifications. Lots of these fortifications and lots of locations, we don't have any signs of any warfare associated with them at all. It's only in Scotland, for example, that in the Iron Age, we find one or two forts that have been set alight. So archaeologists have said, oh my God, this is evidence to prove that the Romans besieged these hill forts. And then somebody turns around and says, actually, have you noticed that the earth and the timber has almost turned into solid rock? And you start to work out that these forts were deliberately fired to give them a sense of permanence, almost vitrified. You've got forts like this, and there's no sign of warfare, but they look like there's signs of warfare, but they've been deliberately set alight. So it's trying to get into the mindsets of why people did things in the past. Now, one of the things as well is that we've got these different tribal names up there. It's probably the same rule that I use when we look at tribal names across Wales. These people names were actually scribbled down on a papyrus somewhere, and they didn't really understand what the names were, and that's what stuck with it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that, and you're going to go wow, and then we're going to go back again. So this is what I was talking about, and I've actually got some notes that I want to read out in regards to that last image that we've seen. But before we actually talk about the last image that we've just seen, I'd like to mention this, for example. You can clearly see this is actually from about 2000 on, right? Now, unfortunately, right, this map that I've got in front of me, which is absolutely brilliant, has not been updated ever, which is a shame. Do you know what? I love maps that you could... Oh, look at that, Del. You've got a little bit of a map there. And I just overfolded that, so I creaked.
Just have a look at mine now.
So look at this map here. Look on this map here. All of the forts actually shown on this map in about 2000. They're not on there. They're not on there at all, right? Except in 2000 we found this fort at Cowardor, Inverness, Taradale, and Port Maharmac. Now Port Maharmac is in this area of the Black Isles, Tarbert Ness, up here. And what we've got is evidence now, bit by bit, of Roman forts going all the way up to Dunscasbury Head up here. So that's where we're going to go. And it's likely that Roman forts continued all the way along the north of Scotland. And the problem is, this is a problem. It's a big problem. We are going into a very weird election time. We're going into the Senate elections. The Scottish are going to the Scottish parliamentary elections. And there's this thing called nationalism. The Scots do not want archaeologists like me telling them that Scotland was fully conquered by the Romans. They don't want archaeologists like me saying that the Romans had an easy deal when they got into Scotland, that there was no real resistance in the lowlands. They don't want that, because the Scots want people to feel, for example, that the Romans never ever conquered Scotland, right? And actually, the English never really ever conquered Scotland. We've got a right to be independent and all the rest of it. So this evidence is very, very dangerous. Is very dangerous type of stuff. But anyway, back to the other little plan that I want to look at now. Sort of go back into this. And the reason why I try to make this as quirky as possible, right, is simply because you can get lots more out of something when you're really quirky, right? So Gask Ridge, along Gask Ridge. Now, go back to my little map again. If I say sort of might actually go back too quickly, right? So along Gask Ridge, look at that. Look at the little. Have we got the little plan of Gask Ridge? No, we haven't. Let's just go back to that again. Oh yes, we do. Right. So from our dock, which is down here, there's our dock, and then all the way up. It keeps going all the way along here, tracing all the way into Ixtuttil is actually a length of a Roman road. That's what we actually see, a length of a Roman road. And then what we do see, we can't really find, you've got a place known as Cardine on there. There's nothing marked on the map here of a Roman road continuing. But what there is a river. Now, one thing that we do know is the Romans were really good at using rivers. They had a tendency to use rivers more than they used roads. I mentioned this last week because when you're looking at descriptions of when you look at Agricola, for example, and you look at some of the other greater Roman generals, you talk about waterborne Roman troops being moved around the country, which is really, really important. So riverways north between this locality, Tutil and Cardine, for example, that there's a length of river, and you can actually see Cargill as well. So this is a river that was probably used to move supplies around, and that's why we haven't found a length of Roman road. But then what you've got is all these other forts here. This one, Stracathro. Now, it's very likely that the frontier stretched all the way from Stracathro, all the way down to this location of Ardoch, and then this was linked with a length of road all the way to this place known as Camelon. Now, Del, you can know where I could go with Camelon, couldn't you, King Arthur? But then again,
yeah, but I've got my own beliefs on that.
I'm on Zoom, sorry.
So hang on. What I'll do, Dave, is I'll mute you a little bit. Okay, Dave's muted. So anyway, let's carry on. Let's give you a few little more facts. So right, and so the Gascoigne is the modern name given to an early series of fortifications. What does that mean? But it's one of the earliest sort of demarcations between the lowlands and the highlands in Scotland. So that idea between the lowlands and the highlands in Scotland comes all the way from sort of a Roman concept. So modern excavations and interpretation along Gascoigne have been varied. But what we do have is as follows. We've got the fortifications. Ardoch is actually a big fortification like Inchturtle, right? So it's not a fortlet. So we've got forts, we've got fortifications, we've got watchtowers. And some people say that the Gascoigne was only in operation for a short period of time. But I would disagree, and I'm bound to disagree. So it's a ridge that could be considerably more than 10 miles in length. Could be up to 20 miles in length, depending on which writer you look at. Right, so basically from Ardoch all the way over to Inchturtle, you're talking about 10 miles in distance or more, right? At least 10 miles more in distance or more. But Gascoigne itself, we haven't really actually defined the true extent of it. So the Gascoigne system was constructed roughly between 70 and 80 years AD. Now, this is rather interesting because we're told that Hadrian's Wall wasn't really constructed until the year 120 years AD. So, as a frontier, this was one of the earliest frontiers to be constructed anywhere in Britain. I can be corrected on that, but we're not going to go. It's one of the earliest frontiers to be constructed in Britain. Don't go there. Thank you very much. So, the Antonine Wall, which is a little bit south of the Gascoigne itself, not too far, that flows through Glasgow all the way sort of over to Edinburgh itself. That was constructed after Hadrian's Wall. So this is a strange thing. Listen to this. Gascoigne, if that's built around between 70 and 80 years AD, the one you're actually looking at now, that's one of the earliest frontiers in Britain, but it's not the earliest one. Next, Hadrian's Wall. We all know where Hadrian's Wall is south of the Antonine Wall, right? So we believe that was being constructed around 120 years AD. And the Antonine Wall, which is directly below the Gascoigne, where we've mentioned Camelon is actually part on that plan there of the Antonine frontier, that was built around the 140s. So in other words, the idea of where these things are in Scotland, these ridges and these fortified frontiers or customs posts or whatever, vary and move around all the time. Yeah. So there's the use of words such as Glen Blocker forts, and what this actually fulfilled, where the role, what was the role of this? It has traditionally been thought that these forts were meant to prevent invasions out of the Scottish Highland into Roman-held territory. Absolute nonsense. Because they didn't actually build a wall. It was just a raised road with some signal stations. So by the time you've got 2,000 burly blokes from the Highlands running amok beyond that, it's going to be too late. So it's not actually a permanent frontier. It's a road. It's a status symbol. It's a communication line between these forts. The Roman legionary fortress at Inch-Tuthill had a garrison of up to 6,000 soldiers. And it's saying that these soldiers would have been strong enough to deal with any major incursion. But if they wanted to deal with any major incursion, they would have actually built a stone-built Roman wall. And I'm sure you would agree with that. Now, I think the idea is along the lines of communication and status. Tacitus wrote very much about these forts in we believe, Tacitus, who was writing around 86 AD. He was writing in the life of Dea Vitae Julia Agricolae, and he was writing about these are the forts and these are the frontiers, right? We think, or was he? Recent archaeology has shown that many of the forts on the Gask Ridge were being rebuilt. And listen to this. They were built once and they were rebuilt, and some of them were rebuilt again, and they were rebuilt again and again and again and again. Why? Now, that's the thing that me and Del mentioned earlier on. If you're able to build a fort, you've got the time to build it. If you're able to rebuild it, you've got the time to build it. There's no evidence of any destruction of these forts through warfare. So if they're being attacked all the time, why are they, what's going on? What is going on? Oh yeah, they're being attacked all the time, so they've got to rebuild. They've actually got to rebuild these forts. And you're thinking, well, how are you supposed to rebuild a fort when you're actually being attacked? Now, there's so much to say, and in the 1990s, so if we go to the other little bit of a plan, which we're going to actually go on to now, let's sort of go, and then I'm going to mention Cawdor, but let's sort of look at these plans. So what we're going to do, I want to go to this a minute, and we will mention Cawdor because I got some nice information about Cawdor. That's the one. That's the Roman fort in Scotland, which we know the most about furthest north. Obviously, you've got the other sites, but we're still learning about them. We're still actually learning about them. So all of this here, all these other forts that lead all the way from the Gask Ridge, all the way over to Aberdeen, Norman dikes, Rhine dikes. That's referring to the banks and ditches around the fort, basically. Not a dike, but banks and ditches, right? That a Scottish association there. So north of the Gask Ridge, the permanent sites are complemented by a series of large marching camps into the lowlands of northern Scotland in Aberdeenshire. So after we see the Gask Ridge, in the 1990s, researchers discovered possible forts north of Inverness, Tarrandale and Port Mahomack. And these are being, the work still goes on to try and work out much more about what's going on with these forts. And there are several chronological reconstructions of their role and their use over time. So whatever's going on with these forts, they use more than once. That's a clue. If the forts are being used more than once, then it means that the Romans moved into Scotland to go further north, to see what was going on. It's possible that 500 troops, I've always had this idea that the troops building the forts north of Inverness, there was about 500 of them who were actually supplied by the sea. And if there's 500 troops, it's not a large group of men, but it's a portable movement of men. If you've got an army of 10, 20,000, you're not going to be able to move it across the landscape. But if you've got an army of about 500 men, it's quite easy to move them around. They can strategically use the terrain to defend themselves, and they're doing that more than once going into Scotland. So if Scotland's this big sort of threat with guys and women painted in blue standing naked in front of you, wobbling their tongues and sort of chucking spears at you, you're not really going to want to go into Scotland much. But we see a lot going on in Scotland. That's the point I'm trying to make. So what I want to do is actually mention this site of Ardogh. So let's sort of go back again. Let's sort of Ardogh. There is Ardogh. Now Ardogh itself, the Roman name for Ardogh is Alavna, Alavna, or Aluna. And Ardogh itself is the site that we're going to go to next. Now, look at that. Now, you don't often see Roman defences like that anywhere in Britain. These are Roman defences that were meant to last. Look at that. Actually, I say a lie. Anyone who's actually been to the Roman fort at Richborough in Kent will see defences very similar to this. And the defences at Richborough were defences that were built and sort of cleaned out and made to look good. Because they were there, they were displaying off what Rome's about and all the rest of it. And the defences at Ardogh are really in a great state. Look at that aerial view. Now, that is unbelievable. But that's one of a number of forts built at Ardogh. It's one of a number. And what you can see is some permanent fixtures within the centre of the fort. Stone-built structures within the centre of the fort. Now, that's a really important point. Stone-built structures. When the Romans are actually building stone-built structures, they were there to stay and they were there to last. Me and Bill were just sort of pensively talking about marching camps earlier on, practice works and so on. There's lots up by Neath Common, actually. And the lots of them were earth and timber. They were temporary. But we mentioned this word temporary. What is temporary? And it's absolute nonsense, mind my French, absolute crap, to suggest that the Romans built the fort overnight and just moved on. Because it's a lot of work to build a fort. These guys have been marching for over 30 miles, right? And then they're expected to build a fort, and then the next night they build another fort. I always say that as being a sense of nonsense, right? They're likely reusing, in lots of cases, existing hill forts and so on to get around the landscape. And the marching camps that we actually do see are probably used for more than just one night stop. This was used for more than one night stop. It was actually used for 100 years, 150 years, for a long period of time. The landscape was used over a long period of time. We've got a little plan actually showing you that, which we're going to actually go on to. And again, look at that there. This is one site within Ardogh. There is the Ardogh fort. There it is in front of us. Now, I love this. Whoever put this together, I thank you. I salute you, because they've done a lot of work here. But it doesn't take much to work out. Forget all the information. Just go with the dates there, right? Forget all the information. So what we've got, this one, the Ardogh fort, is that one there. Yeah, and then what we do find is that slightly north of it is another camp or fort that's been constructed, right? So that's contemporary with the fort, right? You've got another camp here. It's saying you've got a couple of other camps up here. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. The bit of an annex. We can't really decide what's going on. So the green ones, the red ones, let's just get the cursors in, otherwise it's going to be a hell of a mess, right? Let's put a little bit of a timeline in there, which makes a little bit more sense than the dates that we've actually got on there. So annotation bar, there's my annotation bar. Hang on, I want this, there, good, there we go. Move Roger to the side of the screen, because he needs to be moved. That, and that are more or less contemporary. Right, so, and chuck that annex on there, right? But what you do see is there's a date there. It was also being rebuilt. So that fort's being rebuilt. So what we need to do, we need to change that there. That's being rebuilt, okay? So, and then what we've got, so that takes us into from the 80s into the 100s. And then what we've got into the 100s, let's sort of try and change my ink here. It's not, hang on a minute. We want to clear all that there. We want a new ink, good. We want that. So what we've got now, so we've got the green ones and the red ones, that's in the 80s. And then we've got the other campaign associated with Antoninus Pius. So that takes us here. Okay, so that's into the 130s, 140s. That's Antoninus Pius. He's the one who's given the name to the Antonine Wall, which is south of Ardoch. And then it goes a bit quiet. Now, that's the question. When it goes a bit quiet, the big question is, and this is what lots of archaeologists think, is this fort here, which is also being rebuilt in the late 130s into the 140s, is this fort itself used for a lot longer than from the 130s, 140s? How long is this fort actually used for? That is the real big question. And if this landscape is used for more than just a few years, then it means to say that we've got permanent Roman occupation in Scotland. Now look at this, is where the interesting thing comes in here. We got the idea of Septimus Severus in the 200s to 209, and we got this one 208. Now Septimus Severus is another Roman general who's also campaigning in Scotland. Now the big question is, why is Septimus Severus actually campaigning in Scotland? It's nowhere. It's a backwater. Right? Don't know how many of you have actually been to Scotland. It's absolutely a beautiful place, but you can go from A to B and wander for hour upon hour and not see a single house. That's what it would have been like back then. And Scotland doesn't have millions of people living in it either. It's got a few 100,000 people living at this time, all spread around the whole of Scotland, all sort of, some people not getting on with each other, these people in this glen and so on, a bit like the valleys in Wales today. The people in one valley here don't get on with the other valley, and they certainly wouldn't have got together. So it's always thought that Septimus Severus is in Scotland because in crude words, he wanted to kick arse. But whose arse was he kicking with 30,000 men? Or was he on, or was this some kind of training session? Right? I go with this training session idea more than trying to conquer Scotland when Scotland seemingly has already been conquered, or whatever they wanted to conquer of Scotland is already in the bag. Now this is the thing I'm sort of thinking about. So what I'm going to do is probably give you a little bit more about this really obscure Roman fort in Scotland, but it needs to be brought to you as being a locality that we can learn a lot from. So we're not going to do Staingate yet. So I'm just going to keep this little plan up here. I want to chuck a load of information at you, and so hang on, let's get my Ardoch up here a minute. Hang on, I've lost my notes for Ardoch, and just want to tell you a little bit more about the Ardoch fort, and then we'll sort of move on. So here we go. Excellent, I've got my Ardoch. Okay, so Ardoch, obviously principally associated with the Gask Ridge. It's a scheduled ancient monument. It's used, reused. The landscape is used over a long period of time. Various different hoards found across the landscape, indicating that people within the Roman period are using this site for varying times, not just for one moment in time. So they found considerable silver coin hoards associated with Ardoch, and unfortunately we don't really have the dates. Well, all we got is Roman silver coin hoards are being found associated with the Roman fort. Now, what I'd like to do now is it would be a good thing to try and move a little bit further on with our other sites. So if we can get a little bit more information out there, I want to do my Leptis Magna, right? So I would like to look at this frontier here. This is Staingate. Now, I said that Hadrian's Wall as a frontier or a customs post or a division between south and north, or whatever you want to call it, was constructed in the 120s. However, one thing I deliberately left out when we were looking at the Gask Ridge was that Staingate was already, that the road at Staingate was being constructed exactly the same time. Oh, hang on a minute, hang on, let's work this out, right? So the Romans are building some kind of ridge, frontier, communication length north of Edinburgh, exactly the same time that we were building Staingate, which was basically from Carlisle over to the beautiful Roman fort of Corbridge. Now I tell you what, we're not going to be able to do Corbridge today. We're just going to plush over a few images. But Corbridge is another set of wonderful Roman remains in Britain. To be honest with you, what we need is a good book looking at all the visible Roman remains in Britain, right? And that's one that I'll get around to in about 10 years' time. Bill, you can proofread it as well.
You might need that.
Sure, Bill. Sure. Staingate. Staingate. Now, it's not complete, is it? So you're thinking, well, what is this? It doesn't actually go all the way over to Newcastle. It doesn't go all the way over there, right? It don't go all the way over to Wallsend. It just, that's all it is. So it can't, what we believe is that Staingate was constructed as a communication line from Carlisle over to Corbridge. It makes sense. Linking in with Watling Street, that makes sense. We also put, it was a raised bank with a road on the top of it, right? An agger with a road with a nice camber on the top of it. Now, it's not really a frontier if you can get around it a little bit further on, yeah. And it's not really a frontier if you can get around it the other side. So our interpretation may be slightly off the mark. So Staingate, let's just sort of show you a couple of images of it. Now, this is actually south of the site of Vindolanda, which isn't exactly on Hadrian's Wall. It's set back from Hadrian's Wall, right? And we actually, Bill, didn't we? We had hang on a minute, I made a bit of a mistake about that. Yes, sorry. When I said it wasn't set along Hadrian's Wall, I'm actually thinking of another blooming site. Sorry. Yes, I'm going to correct myself. Yeah, Vindolanda is along Hadrian's Wall, right? But Staingate as a frontier is a little bit south of Vindolanda, and this is a stone marker along the length of Staingate, which is a little bit south of Vindolanda, which again is south of Hadrian's Wall again, and what we have is these embankments that you can still trace across this landscape, right? And actually, when I made that little brief mistake, which I quickly corrected myself about Vindolanda, Corbridge is the one that's set back from Hadrian's Wall. I always get the two mixed up because whole Corbridge is actually along the length of Staingate. And Corbridge is connected with Hadrian's Wall by a length of road along Watling Street from the Staingate, along a length of road from Watling Street, all the way actually to Hadrian's Wall itself. Tell you a little bit about Staingate that we actually mentioned last week. So Staingate, right, now there's lots of information about Staingate on the internet. There's quite a lot, right? And Staingate is from the Northumbrian dialect, Staingate, which basically means stone road, not gate. Gate, road, Stangate, Northumbrian dialect. So it's a rather interesting thing, and let's not get Staingate mixed up with a road that is associated with Colchester, Stane Street, and there's also Stane Street associated with Chichester as well, but it's Staingate. Staingate differed from most other Roman roads in that it often followed the easiest gradients and so tended to weave around, whereas typical Roman roads followed a straight path or an existing routeway that was more appropriate. So Staingate again was built at exactly the same time as the Gask Ridge. It's Corbridge is being built around the same time as Staingate as well, associated with the Gask Ridge. And what we do have is a nice image of the Staingate associated with Corbridge. Now, the one thing that we do have associated with Staingate, it does actually follow the course of the River Irthing. And one second, folks, I've just got somebody knocking at the door, which is really frustrating. Hang on, keep that in your mind. Stay there, stay there. Hello?
Yo,
Yes, I do. Where are you? Are you able to put it in the lane? Because I'm teaching this snack hall. If you put it in the lane, she'll come back up. So any problems, come back over. Yeah, let me know.
I hope it's not the bailiffs.
Bloody chickens! One of them.
You sure, Bill? Could be the bailiffs.
Well, no, it was similar to the bailiffs. One of our chickens had got out into the garden, so two thingies down. So what we do see with Staingate, it's an association of making a statement. The Romans were making a statement with Staingate. They were saying, look, this is a sense of permanence. This is where we are. This is who we are. And what I'm going to do, I'll show you that from the next image. There it is. The main street. The Roman road through Corbridge. Now, I have never been to Corbridge, but the Roman remains at Corbridge on a nice day, Bill. Must be absolutely spectacular. But we didn't go to Corbridge when we had the trip to Hadrian's Wall. I tell you what, Bill, Hadrian's Wall must have had the nicest weather we've ever had for an excursion. Is that correct or wrong?
It was wet. Very wet. Wasn't it, Pat?
Yes. It was so wet that I had to sit down in a restaurant and dry myself off because I was absolutely naffed. Anyway,
umbrella.
Yes, my umbrella broke as well. That was absolutely. Oh. So
Windy?
yeah, it was windy as well, windy and wet. So what we've got here is the Staingate actually goes through Corbridge. There it is. There it is. Staingate going through Corbridge, and that's where it basically ended, because the Staingate joined up with Watling Street, and then what we then have is there we go. These are the beautiful remains at Corbridge, and this is second to none. You've got the hypercourse system underneath, and you've got the big slabs above, and you've got these walls. Some walls are 1.5 meters in height still. You've got bits of column hanging out. This was a place. This was a location that was going places. And look at that aerial photograph, and look at all the beautiful bits of Roman remains. What we do know about Corbridge is that a town was built. A town was actually built around it as well. So it also became the Roman city of Corstopitum. This Roman city of Corstopitum was very much associated with this Roman fortification, and again it would have gained a lot of trade, because it was the northern road that led beyond Hadrian's Wall, going all the way up to the Antonine Wall. So this was a very, very important fort and very important Roman town. So look at the beautiful remains there, and again these are granaries, and you've got the one in front is a granary, and we've got the one alongside it. You've got the hypercourse actually heating these slabs, which is absolutely brilliant. We've got nice little bits of Roman drums of masonry. So this site itself is a place to go to if you want to understand the Romans. So there's our little bit of a Corbridge. There's our Corbridge there, and we've already seen this. And I was going to mention as well quickly, I wanted to, before we looked at a little bit of Leptis Magna before we finish, I wanted to look at Cawdor over here, right? Cawdor. And let's sort of look a little bit of the information I've got about Cawdor. Now, Cawdor itself is east of a Scottish village known as Glacantray. It's not far away from Inverness, and it was discovered in 1984. It was discovered in 1984, which is actually 6 years after this map was actually published. So that would have been very strange, actually, because this map itself, that would have been very strange on this map. You can imagine that you go all the way to past Aberdeen, and there's no Roman forts marked on the map, and suddenly you go to Cawdor and Inverness, and you've got a Roman fort. And it does show sort of some marching camps, but and that's the thing, you see. So you've got this fort at Cawdor. So this was discovered in 1984. And the one thing that we can say from a description of the archaeologist who actually worked at the site, this is as it goes. We'll just read out what he says. This is his own description. This would probably be best more than anything. 1986. Interpreted the main structural phase within the Cawdor site's history as potential evidence for the presence of a Roman military work. This assumption was based on a number of salient factors. These include the rectilinear form of the enclosure ditch with its V-shaped profile. Post holes were uncovered, which assumed belonged to a gate, although this was an assumption that 4 post holes made a gate. These post holes are not evenly spread and are unlikely to have all been part of the same structure, so phases of building. The archaeologist at Certain Jones also noted the presence of possible contemporary rectilinear timber buildings, which he thought were reminiscent in both size and form to barrack blocks. Although the reality is that the adjoining dots, and assuming that the post holes, which were not equally spread, are from the same structure. And finally, the dating evidence. But obviously, it's likely that it's from different phases. And what we don't really know much more about the fort than that, but what we do find is that we've got Port Mahomet and we've got Taradale north of Inverness. All of these sites need to be investigated, and obviously understanding what's going on with the Roman occupation and subsequent rule in Scotland for quite a lengthy period of time. So what I would like to do now is I would like to go to Leptis Magna. So let's go to Leptis Magna. Now, where is Leptis Magna? It is. We've gone through all the images and we haven't shown you where. Sorry. There's Leptis Magna. Near Tripoli. And me and Bill are going to go over there next week. I will leave Bill at the airport because I don't want to get shot when I arrive at the airport. So Leptis Magna is one of these beautiful sites that is in a war-torn country at this minute, Libya. And if we sort of go back a little bit and look at these remains at Leptis Magna, can you fault these remains? Look at that! So obviously, some of this has been reconstructed. I'm going to say that that's been reconstructed in front of us, but whatever, that is absolutely spectacular. When I say that's been reconstructed in front of us, I mean the columns, not the actual, the basilica-like wall. That's as it's always has been. And again, look at this temple building. It's absolutely brilliant with the marbles and the local sandstones. And look at that street there that would have been colonnaded from these arches. So Leptis Magna is an absolute true gem of the Roman world. And again, there's inscriptions lying around, and you've got the Ionic styles. So this is the Ionic style. So that's not a Roman style. That's a Greek influenced style. I just sort of throw something away as well. There used to be a fashion in Africa some years back that if there was a Roman temple and the archaeologists wanted to get to the Greek temple, they would blow up the Roman temple on the top and then actually excavate the Greek temple, which is actually a bit of false history, isn't it? One minute there's a Roman temple there, you've destroyed it and you're just interested in the Greek stuff. Now that used to actually be a fashion. So we've lost lots of Roman sites in Africa because people just wanted to excavate the Greek stuff, which is a massive shame actually. But hang on, if we go back a bit, sort of get my sort of slides back in a minute, and look at that beautiful theatre. You know, we were mentioning at other sites that you have this backdrop you have the stage, and you have the theatre, and you've got this beautiful backdrop, and there is our theatre. So what you go from the harbour, you've got all these wonderful, so it marks as number one, the Arch of Septimus Severus. We mentioned Septimus Severus in regards to Roman Britain. There's a link. So we've got theatre over number two, the Chalcidium. Where's our Chalcidium? Can you ever see number three? I can't see number three anyway. We've got the market. We've got the little market there, over by there. We've got number five, the Baths of Hadrian. Hadrian didn't half like his bloody baths, didn't he? Wherever we ever go and see Hadrian, he's building these massive baths everywhere. He's obsessed by them. The Palestra, which was basically that's the exercise hall next door to the baths. So that actually goes with it. The temple, the Nymphaeum, that's there. You've got this sort of colonnaded street, which would have had a beautiful veranda above as well, and all the rest of it. You've got this little forum, and it's basically saying the old forum when this is a much smaller city. You've got to chuck in the old temple of Jupiter as well, and this beautiful, the beautiful port as well, and it's got its own stadia, circus, and amphitheatre, which is just slightly off the plan. Amazing. Again, a massive city, but this city had walls around it, but not all of the city was used. It was a bit like Constantinople. Look at that there. Now, this would have been the pediments and the friezes above a colonnade. Now, you can see there that this would have been upright on a colonnade, but unfortunately, the columns are now gone. So that bit's been sort of reconstructed there. And look at that. Doesn't that look absolutely mighty? It's absolutely amazing that this collapsed. And it collapsed intact, and there's probably a reason for that. Is when all the timber had actually fallen and rotted into the center of the structure, so by the time the stone collapsed, it was almost falling onto not stone but onto timber, so it sort of broke the fall, and lots of the wonderful carvings actually remained intact. Again, wandering down the street from the wonderful port that is Leptis Magna. And again, this I think this is the Nymphaeum. I think this temple of the Nymphaeum. I think that's what this one is. And again, the beautiful basilica structure. This building was being absolutely huge. This would have been absolutely huge. This would have actually been colossal with those columns. And again, aerial views showing what's going on. So you've got the harbour. The harbour's actually silted up. So the original harbour's actually silted up. Hang on a minute, let's just, I'll ignore that. Aren't I good? That's absolutely, the harbour's actually silted up there. And it's actually showing where you've got the theatre. Most of this, vast swathe of this haven't been built on, so you can actually see it today. And look at that there. That there, if you're looking at the silted up harbour, there's our silted up harbour. So obviously when the harbour's completely silted up, you've lost your trade, credit, and commerce. And one thing I was actually mentioning earlier on, was I not? I said that you've got this wall. We mentioned about the stadia and we mentioned the amphitheatre. You've got this whole zone around it, which is unoccupied. Now, the likes of Constantinople did this. And when it was thought that the city was going to be much bigger than it actually was. But a big chunk of it was never occupied. They laid out the streets. We've seen this happen in Britain where they think there's going to be a new housing estate. A bit like Cowbridge, really. They've laid out all the roads and they put all the plumbing and everything in, and they've never built houses. There's also a place in Lantrison. They built a whole area. They've cleared a whole area and they put all drainage and roads in, and they haven't built on it. Right? So this in a way is what's happening with... this is what's happening with Leptis Magna. Not all of it was occupied, a bit like Constantinople, and I do believe that's the end of that. So one thing I'd like to say, one thing I'd like to mention, is that there's so much out there in regards to the Romans, and we'll actually do a bit more next week. But I don't know if you've ever. I got this off the manual. Michelle, there was a little instruction manual from this little lamp. this clay lamp that we actually bought at Clean when we had an Archaeology Cymru trip there, and it basically said if you use basically any oil, any cooking oil, it will burn. And I said, oh, no chance of that. So anyway, it did actually burn. So any oil will suffice for burning in here without a wick. It's quite odd, but there's one problem with this, right? Because it's made of clay, which is quite porous. If you leave this on the mantelpiece, the oil will go through it, and it'll obviously, the oil will be good for the mantelpiece, particularly if it's wood. But these do leak, and these were made by the hundreds of billions in the Roman world, because this was obviously the source of light. And this reconstruction has, it's mentioned, Kalian, Isker, Augustus, Legion II. Well, Kalian is obviously the modern name for it, but obviously all interesting things. But whenever you see a stamp with a Roman legion on it, i.e. As we found a tile in Cowbridge with LEG2 Augusta on it, associated with the Second Augusta Legion, that's where you've got the Roman military. Not just the idea of a road, but a tile with the stamp. So you've got the, you might find the 20 of Valia Vitrix, or you might find the 14th Gemini Legion, or the 2nd of Dietrich Legion, or the very famous Roman Legion that's also served in Britain, which was the 9th Legion, the 9th Hispanic Legion, which disappeared, probably somewhere up in the Brecon Beacons, or Scotland, or down the back of Bill's sofa. So, on that note, are there any questions?
Yes.
Let's do Bill first, and then Rog.
No, let Rog go first.
Go on, Rog.
Leptis Magna, was it that Mussolini helped to restore things in the wartime to help as he done elsewhere?
What's that, Rog? You're gonna have to speak up. You're really faint.
In Leptis Magna, did Mussolini rebuild anything in the wartime?
Yeah, lots of Leptis Magna have actually been rebuilt, but the massive basilica.
If he had a big program to rebuild, didn't he?
Ah, right, Hadrian. Yeah. I thought you thought about.
Mussolini.
No, Mussolini.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I already said bits of it had been rebuilt. Yeah. But except for the basilica, the backdrop.
How much did he do? Do we know if he did have a big program for it, or just?
Well, Libya would have been under the control of the Italians, but the Italians were doing a lot of, I think lots of what happened at Leptis Magna was actually built before that, because I've been to Rhodes, right. And when you go to Rhodes, they talk about Rhodes being under the control of the Italians, and you hear about bits of Rhodes being reconstructed in the early 1920s. That was before Mussolini had the umph and gumph to actually start putting the money into rebuilding. So the Italian archaeologists are rebuilding lots of things, including they're having to directly compete with British archaeologists like Arthur Evans on the island of Crete. So the Italians wanted to reconstruct their stuff as much as the British did. The Italians actually used cast iron. So unfortunately, in their rebuilding of sites, because the iron has expanded, it's caused untold problems. And actually, Arthur Evans did something similar to Knossos with the cast iron as well.
All right.
Cast iron framework.
All right. Yeah. Good. Okay.
So, Bill.
Yeah. Two comments. One on marching camps, and
Can I just stop? Can I just stop a minute? Did I say cast iron? No, I didn't mean cast iron. I meant when were you putting metal framework in? That's not cast iron.
Concrete.
No, when you get the metal framework in it.
Ferroconcrete.
Wrought iron.
Wrought iron, that's the one! Bloody cast iron, I should know the difference by now. Sorry. Wrought iron framework, and it's obviously expanded. Cast iron, anyway, wouldn't have. Sorry. I'm glad I spotted it. Nobody else did. Bill, go for it.
With my engineering hat on, when our friends arrived in AD 43, I don't think they could have built anything permanent for the first few years, because in that time they would have a massive planning and survey team going out in the country and deciding where the towns are going, where the forts were going, etc., where the marching camps are going. And I guess they'd send out first teams to build the marching camps. which had to be defensive, really, with a palisade fence. They had to be, surely. We don't know that. Otherwise, what's the point of them? Because if you look in my neck of the woods, okay, I've been to 3 marching camps. The one at Banwen, which you mentioned, I think, last week, and there's one in the Neath Valley overlooking Tonna.
Yes.
And about 4 miles further north, there's one at Blaencwm Caca,
Yeah.
overlooking Resolven. Right?
Oh, in my new book.
Overlooking Resolven.
Yeah.
And I've been there, and I couldn't understand, you know, they couldn't have made these on the hoof. They must have gone up once and made them, okay?
Yes, that's my point.
The other mystery about this, you would have thought that marching camps would be halfway between forts. But the one at Tonna is only about 5 miles from Needham, okay? And Cwm Caca is another 4 miles on. So why do you have these cluster, these 2 marching camps so close together? That's a bit of a mystery to me, why that should be.
No,
These
are practice camps, most of them. And, you know, they send the on Neath Common, right? They've got there's bits where you get a bit of a bank, and that's all you've got.
That's all you can see. Yeah. That's all you can see.
Yeah, that's what they are. So yeah, the way some of these are actually built, obviously, to have banks and ditches around something sort of gives a bit of permanence, and also protects your animals and everybody against any stray attacks from animals, humans, or anything else like that. We didn't build these things because they thought there was a huge army over the hill. If they thought a huge army was over the hill, there would have been these forts would have been massive. And the thing is, when you look at Culbren, right, there's at least 3 Roman forts there, all in different localities, right? If I was under constant attack, I would have chosen the locality that we've already built at, not build more.
Yeah. Okay. The point about Leptis Magnus, which may be useful to everyone. Hollywood, as you know, often goes on location to film their movies.
Yes.
Now, many years ago, a film came out called Legend of the Lost with John Wayne and Sophie Loren. Basically, they're lost in the desert.
Yeah.
Filmed in Libya, and in one scene, you can see them wandering around these magnificent Roman ruins. It's not mentioned where they were, but it gives you a good visual of exactly what it was like there.
Yes.
So if you ever see this film, Legend of the Lost, come out again, make a point of looking at it.
That is good, and we will. And actually, the life.
I think last time it was on about 4 years ago. So it's but if you see it in a video shop or whatever, you know.
Yeah, you can probably get her on YouTube.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, have a look. It's worth a do. It really is.
Life of Brian's actually filmed in North Africa, and so is lots of the Star Wars films.
Yes, yeah, in Tunisia, isn't it? Yeah, or Morocco. Yeah.
Yes, Morocco or Tunisia. Yeah. Who's next? Rod's already done his thing. Del.
Absolutely enjoyed that, especially because I've got those maps which I found. I've got another map from the OS, which again I had about 30 years ago, which shows all the known hill forts in Britain at the time. But I need to find that. It's in our messy room where we check everything.
Oh, I know what you mean. Can I admit that I made a mistake, right? I was right in the first place, right? When you're talking fast, and I was right in the first place when I said that Vindolanda was set back from Hadrian's Wall. It is. I don't know why.
Yes.
I don't know why. Why didn't somebody correct me?
Well, you didn't. You were talking so rapidly, I had no chance to interject, shall we say.
But anyway, I made a mistake there. I should have gone with my first turn. Of course, I knew Vindolanda was set back from Hadrian's Wall.
It was on the hill about half a mile away.
I thought you said that.
It was built before.
Oh, I was right in the first place. I didn't make a mistake at all. Thanks, guys. Richard.
Thank you, Carl. I've got to go now.
We'll see you tomorrow, Del.
No, not tomorrow. I've got to take my son to the dentist. I'll see you next Wednesday.
Pick up with the recording. Brilliant.
I will do. Thank you.
Richard, babes.
Oh,
Del.
Actually, interested in that Leptis Magna, and I was actually watching the BBC now put a load of programs on that were done in the 60s with what's his name, Wheeler, Mortimer Wheeler.
Oh, good old Wheeler, yes.
Yeah, and you can go on the sort of BBC history. There's about half a dozen programs, sort of from sort of early 60s. And one of them concentrated quite a bit on Leptis Magna. But they're all in black and white.
Oh, no, even better with good old Mortimer Wheeler, with his old, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but you can go on the BBC history.
No, because Sir Mortimer Wheeler was black and white, wasn't he? He was never colour.
Yeah.
I think there was one in colour. But,
He was a colourful character.
Yeah, he definitely was. He definitely was. Pat. Oh, she's gone asleep. Bill, David.
She has to.
She has.
You've got that wonderful effect on her, Carl. You really have, you know.
Yeah, I know I did. That was the same.
It's a gift. It's a gift.
David, is there anything you want to say before we finish? No, we can't hear you, David. You're muted.
You.
No, thank you. I'm fine.
Right. Did you like that today, this week, David?
Pardon?
What, did that tick the boxes today, David?
Yes, fine. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. And Pat, anything you want to say, Pat?
No, I enjoyed it. It's good.
All right, then. And Rog, quick.
Yeah. What was the name of that film, Bill?
Legend of the Lost.
Legend of the Lost.
Me and Rog are going to watch it over Peter's. So,
You can watch Soft Lorraine as well. That's the bonus.
All right.
What was I going to say? Again, Roger.
Yeah.
Ken's rejoined again. He said to say hello.
Oh, hi. Oh, is he okay?
He's still alive.
He did see some good work down at the St. Nicholas and all that.
He's still alive. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to call that a day now. So I will see Richard on Friday. I will see Pat and Bill tomorrow, and Roger when the sun shines on Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carl.
My pleasure.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bill, Pat, Roger, Enos or Anus. Or...
And the world.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah,
Bye. Oh, that was another one.